Good morning, everyone. Um, my next video in the series Inhumanity in Islam is rape and of dead women and cannibalization. So we will first see what the Islamic scriptures have to say about it, and then we will see if Muhammad and his gang did it. So let's move on. I'll share with you. So this is Sahih Bukhari. It's volume 2, book 23 and number 374. Narrated by Anas bin Malik. We were in the funeral procession of one of the daughters of the Prophet, and he was sitting by the side of the grave. I saw his eyes shedding tears. He said, "Is there anyone among you who did not have sexual relations with his wife last night?" Abu Talha replied in the affirmative, and so the Prophet told him to get down in the grave, and so he got down in her grave. So I want to tell you that Muhammad and his gang raided people in the night and killed all the men and the children who had pubic hair, but rest of them he captured, women and children, and kept them as slaves, and they raped them and then sold them. And Muhammad had picked out the most beautiful of them and left the rest for his gang people, and he made sure that each one had chance to rape a woman. But um, once upon a time, there wasn't there weren't enough women for each one to get share of one each. So Talha was without any woman. So Muhammad's one of the daughters had died, the so-called daughters, because Muhammad only had um, one daughter called Fatima and a son through Maria Kiptia. But one of the daughters died, and the funeral procession was going on. And when Muhammad asked all his men whether each of them had got a female to have sex with, and Talha replied in the negative, so Muhammad asked him to get down in the grave of the recent dead body. And so much was his love for his this um, being fair in the raping of women that he did not care whether the dead body belonged to his own daughter. And he asked for necrophilia. He asked his gang person to do necrophilia. So from the scriptures we see that this happened, that Muslims raped dead women if they just had to do this ritual of raping women, and when they didn't find live women they would rape dead women, simply put. So now let me show you share with you another document which was an original document, meaning that it is not a chain of narration from past from one to another, but these are 14th and 15th century documents itself where Muhammad himself is speaking. So I'll share with you this article that I got. It's a 12-page article, and I'll tell you the gist, and I will give you the reference so that you can get this article. It's the journal called Confluencia, and it's volume 31, number 1, and fall edition 2015. And there is an article called Sin and Redemption: Woman's Body, Necrophilia, and Spanish Islam. And it is written by Miguel Angel um, Vazuez. So in this, it's talking about the Christian conquest of Spain. So here, let's read a little bit from here. The beginning of the end started soon after the fall of the Cordoban Caliphate, when the Christians started the series of wars called Reconquista. This process culminated in 1492 with the fall of Granada and in 1501 with the subsequent ultimatum given to the Mudejares of Castile and Leon, forced conversion to Christianity or expulsion. So the Christians came and conquered Spain, and they were asked to flee the land or be forced to convert into Christianity. Those who decided to stay and convert came to be known as Moriscos. So these Moriscos were converted to Christianity, but some of them, they saved their documents, not documents, I mean their scriptures under the tiles, and the manuscripts. Since the possession of such a manuscript was grounds for inquisitorial process, the Moriscos hid them in false floors, walls, or columns where they remained after their expulsion in 1609. And that's the reason why the manuscripts were able to survive until their discovery in the 19th century. So now I'm not going to read out the whole 12 pages, but I will just tell you that um, here what is the gist of it and a little bit so that I cover everything. I will take help of this page so that I remember. Um, so it's talking about these Moriscos who saved the manuscripts, and then there is a story about this. Now he talks about hadith. What is hadith? These are the collections of saying and actions of Prophet Muhammad. So hadith, Quran, is the sacred text of uh, Islam, but hadith is a collection of what Muhammad said to somebody else and what that person said to another person regarding Muhammad, and these are the chain of narrations. And Islam offers its believers two important sources that guide their behavior. In the first place is the Quran, which we know is the word of Allah, and in the second, the Hadith. And these serve the purpose of clarifying passages of Quran and provide a model of conduct of ideal Muslim. And so these Sahih means authentic. A Hadith is considered authentic, Sahih. It has an uninterrupted chain of transmitters going back to the Prophet. So, Sunni Islam considers authentic six collections of hadith, and those are Bukhari, Muslim, like Sahih Bukhari, Sahih Muslim, Abu Dawud, Al Tirmidhi, Al Nasai, and Ibn Majah. So, these are six books of hadith which are considered authentic. Now, let's talk about Isnad. Isnad is the chain of narration. So they are telling about this story about Umar ibn al-Khattab is telling a story, but he also triggers its action by entering the tent of the Prophet Muhammad in tears. So there is this guy called Umar ibn al-Khattab, and he's a boy and he's crying, and he enters the Prophet Muhammad's tent and asks him. And Umar says that he has seen a young man crying very bitterly outside, and he could not bear to see him cry, so he himself started crying. So Muhammad said to bring out that boy, and but the boy is reluctant to go. And the Prophet Muhammad, he kept questioning, trying to understand the nature of his sin. And he asked him, like, have you murdered somebody? Have you stopped believing in God? But the young man is crying so much, he doesn't answer anything. And then Muhammad tries to convince him that God will forgive all his sin, even if it is as big as the heaven and the earth. To which the young man retorts that his sin is not only bigger than the heaven and the earth, it is bigger than the throne of God. So now let's see what kind of sin he has committed, which is bigger than the throne of God. Finally, he concedes that his sin is not bigger than God's forbearance, at which he confesses. So the shocking nature of the scene is displayed with euphemism, which at first is not entirely clear to the reader. But the gravity of the transgression becomes clear when the young man says that revealing the fact that he has committed a necrophilic act. So the young boy has had rape with a dead woman. The young man continues his tale, relating that just after having committed this act, the young maiden came back to life and castigated him. So he felt that the body of this young woman is speaking. Now let's see. Aside from the obvious sexual offense, the young woman makes the young man aware of yet another transgression with deep socio-religious implications. He has done undone the mortuary rituals that had been so carefully performed on her body from an anthropological point of view. So all this young boy is saying, I will tell you in short, that he felt that the body of this woman came up and spoke to him that, see, you have desecrated me, that you have done three things to me. One is that you raped me. Second thing, you destroyed the the embalming liquid which they put on the dead. So they she her her embalming was desecrated, and then he left her body open and naked. So what she seemed what he's trying to say what she was trying to say is that this boy had not only committed rape, but he had desecrated the embalming rituals, that they put an embalming, they wash in a Muslim family. If somebody dies, they wash the body, and then they chant their prayers, and they put an embalming liquid, and then they bury the dead with their Islamic rituals and Islamic prayers. So this woman is complaining. It seems to that young boy that that the body of the woman is speaking to him, that he has desecrated um, the more um, the embalming rituals of this woman. And also, since a woman in according to Islam should be protected and be kept under cover, and here her dead body is laying in the open, so he has committed three abominations. So that's why this body was speaking to him, that this boy felt that her body was speaking to him. So the body speaking, I would explain more that this is something like, you know um, would you know about the story of Arabian Nights, when this Persian king called Shahryar, he once found his brother's wife having sex with another man. So he found her committing adultery, and then when he found his own wife also being an infidel, he ordered all virgins. He would marry them for one night, and he would keep them, and then he would kill them the next day. So he had killed all the virgins in the entire Persia. So one of his vizier's daughter, Shahrazadi, she said, she asked her father to marry her to the prince Shahryar, and she on the night told him a story, and it was an erotica and romantic, and with such mystery and suspense, and she would just stop just before the climax, and then Shahryar would delay her execution because he wanted to hear the end of the story. So she did that, and thus there came 1,001 nights she told the stories. After that, she was executed. So there are different variations of this versions of this story, Arabian Nights, but uh, the bodies of these Islamic women are supposed to speak. Now, according to psychology, if a woman is raped, if a child, like if a virgin little girl is raped, only two things can happen to her. Either she would become very sexual in nature, which most girls become, like they would run away with their neighbors or try to show their private parts. So these little girls become a kind of promiscuous. And the or the other thing is that in very few cases they become they get hatred, they develop hatred towards sex. So most of these Muslim women are raped in their young ages, so they are quite sexual in nature. It's suggested that they are quite sexual in nature and their body speaks, so to say. So let's continue the story. So let's continue reading from where we left off. Is that So this boy, Omar bin Khattab, when he told his story that he had the body of the young woman was speaking to him that he had raped her and he had desecrated the embalming mortuary rituals and that he had laid her body in open. He had committed this great abomination. So on listening to that, Muhammad first said, "Okay, it's a very big sin, and that Allah will not forgive you." But later on, he said that Gabriel came over him and said that, "Who is Muhammad to decide whether Gabriel will whether Allah will forgive him or not? Because the only sin that a person can commit in Islam is the sin of shirk, meaning that if you are a Muslim but you involve other religions, gods, then you are committing a shirk, and only that can lead you to hell. And rest all sins can be forgiven, but the sin of shirk cannot be forgiven. And even if you have committed a murder or you have raped a dead woman, you can still be forgiven. So that's what the story is. And now let's read more about necrophilia. So we get this evidence of necrophilia, and this actually happened, and Muhammad actually spoke to the boy. So these are authentic sources from the 14th century. And now it's just the article is going further into where this necrophilia came up. The questions of Muhammad highlight the magnitude of his transgression as he moves in crescendo from the most obvious and forgivable possibilities, killing someone, losing his faith in God, to other sins that even though he does not specify them, he believes that God in his infinite mercy will forgive. So um, now let's move to the next page, and here we see that. So this is the story I've already told you, that Gabriel says that who are you to forgive, and that then he forgave. Um, Muhammad did not forgive the young man, suggests that he was usurping God's place as he only who can forgive sins. And then necrophilia comes into play. The text attempts a reflection on God's forbearance. The Quran itself underscores his attribute of God from its very first verse: in the name of Allah, most gracious, most merciful. So he will forgive every wrongdoing. According to this story, then the believer is led to conclude that if God forgave the young man's grave sin, he would certainly forgive any sin, however grave, as long as there was faith in him and sincere repentance. In the context of the intended audience of this text, the Moriscos, this idea more than likely spoke to their heart. And Spanish Islam during the Morisco period experienced its darkest hours, and Moriscos felt responsible for this. The fact alone that they were writing in Spanish instead of Arabic was in itself a source of great anxiety. So, because they were barred from writing in Arabic. So, this story tells about necrophilia. Now, let's move on to in the study of Al Jamiado. So, that boy who was weeping and who came to Muhammad, his name was Al Hamiado, and it is seldom the case that one can find the original Arabic story for a story. For the particular case of the story, I did not find the original Arabic source, but I have found an ancient Arabic anecdote that clearly establishes a centenary thematic tradition that evolved into the story from which the text at hand was translated. It is a paragraph-long anecdote that can be found in two books of great importance in the history of Arabic literature: Al-Risal al-Qurayshiyya Film al-Tawassuf. It is a treatise on Sufi principles by Abu al-Qasim Abdul al-Karim bin Hawzan al-Qurayshi, and Kitab Shahr al-Sudur, The Expansion of the Breast, by al-Suyuti in the 15th century and the 11th century. So these two books are very important in the Arabic literature. As far as the first is concerned, no history of Sufism would be complete without mentioning Al Quraysh's text. As for the second, it is a classic on Islamic astrology. In chapter 50 of Al Quraysh's text, a chapter that deals with stories about miracles performed by saints and pious people to whom God had granted special privileges, we found the following anecdote. It is told that one of them was grave looter. Oh, yeah, I have heard about these. That Sufis were considered to be grave looters. But actually, they were not grave looters, they would rape the dead women. It is told that one of them was a grave looter. A woman died, and people prayed for her, and this looter also prayed in order to know where the grave was located. Then late at night he excavated the grave, and she said, see, here again they assume that the body of the woman is speaking. Praised be God, a man who had been forgiven is stealing the shroud of a woman who has been forgiven. He said, suppose you have been forgiven, what makes you think that I have been forgiven? So, this is what he is thinking about the woman, that her body is speaking. But let me tell you that why would a Sufi saint go and steal the shroud of a woman? He is only going to rape the woman, because I don't see whether he would wear a female's clothes. So that makes no sense. Uh, so God, she said, God the Almighty forgave me and all who prayed for me, and you prayed for me. Then he related, then I left her and buried her. So all that is in his own mind. So that's another story about these Sufi saints. The same anecdote appears in Al Suyuti's Shahr al Sudur in chapter 38, page 201, which deals with the awareness that the deceased has about who came to his her grave to pray and visit. So we must then ask, did the scribes who translated and copied this story from the Arabic read the Risala al Qurayshiyya or Kitab Shahr al Sudur? Anyways, you can read this article at your own leisure time. I'm just going to just touch base on whatever. So, one last question that must be addressed: what about the woman in this text? What happened to the young dead lady? The story says nothing about this. In fact, once the young man confesses his sin, she is completely forgotten. You know that in Islam, abuses women and neglects women. So here also, they just wanted to see about this boy and his emotions rather than what happened to the dead. They are not concerned. It is clear that this story is about the young man and his process of repentance and redemption. The woman here serves a secondary purpose, a rhetorical device that helps emphasize the message of the story. So, this is what. Let's move on. So, they say that for Marty Douglas, in Woman's Body, Woman's Word, there exists a very intimate connection between the possibilities a woman has to appear in a text with a voice and her body. So they're basically talking about the body that speaks. Smith and Haddad, in their appendix to the Islamic understanding of death and resurrection, the special case of women and children in the afterlife, warned that when studying Muslim culture with a theoretical approach that responds to Western culture coordinates, such as feminist criticism, one must tread carefully, but the works of Roberts and Marty Douglas, as well as of Smith and Haddad themselves, showed that it is indeed possible to follow those theoretical models and still be able to approach the subject matter. Okay, so they're talking about the uh, that there is a text that this is a text in which a woman is chastising a man, and secondly, what led to her voice was her sexualized body. And why a woman in this text, and we may add why an act of necrophilia. So necrophilia used to occur. So now let me show you something about cannibalization. Let's read this National Review, the mustard seed that liberated Spanish Christians from Islamic rule. So exactly 1300 years ago, in the year 718, a little remembered kingdom was born in Spain. It soon led to the liberation of the Iberian Peninsula from Islamic occupation. To appreciate the significance of that development, we must travel back 7 years earlier to 711, when Arabs and Africans, both under the banner of Islam, godlessly invaded Spain to destroy it. To quote from the Chronicle of 754, once on European soil, they ruined beautiful cities, burning them with fire, condemned lords and powerful men to the cross, and butchered young youth and infant with the sword. So we already talked about necrophilia, raping the dead, and here we are concentrating on cannibalization. And there is one reference here, and that's why I'm reading this from. This talks about the Arabic conquest of Spain, and after meeting and beating Spain's Visigothic nobles at the pivotal Battle of Guadalete, never was there in the West a more bloody battle than this, wrote the Muslim chronicle Al Hakam. For the Muslims did not withdraw their scimitars from them, Christians, for 3 days. The invaders continued to penetrate northward into Spain, not passing a place without reducing it and getting possession of its wealth, for Allah Almighty had struck with terror the hearts of the infidels. We all know that Islam spread at the point of sword and casting terror and forcible conversions. But look at this incident that I'm going to read. Such terrorism was intentionally cultivated in keeping with the Quran 3:151 and 8:12. For instance, the invaders slaughtered, cooked, and pretended to eat Christian captives, while releasing others who, horrified, fled and informed the people of Andalus that the Muslims feed on human flesh, thereby contributing in no small degree to increase the panic of the infidels, wrote Al-Makkari, another Muslim chronicler. So what he's trying to say that there was this boy and he Christian boy who came, and this Muslim man was making cooking some food, and in one uh, on the other stove he was cooking a Christian man, and he pretended that he was eating the Christian man. Actually, he was eating his own food, but he was also cooking on the side a Christian man. And the Christian boy, when he saw this, he was horrified and he ran and told the other Christians that Muslims are eating them. And I know that Muslim man was not eating the Christian, but he was cooking the Christian. So that was there. And recently, in India, there was this Kashmir exodus, and this many of the Kashmiri Hindus were killed. They were raped. Uh, a man used to call a girl as his daughter, a Muslim man, and that day he raped her. And they were told, the Kashmiri Hindus were told to leave their women and daughters, and to leave the place, but leave behind their women and daughters. Such was the scene. And this girl, Girija Tikku, she was sawed while she was alive. And in another case, they ate actually the flesh of a Kashmiri Hindu girl. And I saw that, and now I cannot find that news because they have taken it down from online. But earlier I had seen the picture, and I don't know if I seen the picture, but I seen picture of Girija Tikku being sawed, and I have also her body, I mean. And then I have read the news about this girl who was eaten by these Muslim men in Kashmir. So I come to the end of the stream, and I hope that I've given you some information about necrophilia, which widely existed in Islam. Even Muhammad asked one of his gang persons, Talha, to come down to the grave and have sex with the dead girl. And so necrophilia was widely present, but also cannibalization. I gave you a real example in Kashmir when one girl was eaten by these Muslims. And then we also know from Spain, from the ancient manuscripts, that Spain was uh, in Spain they cooked meat of Christians. I hope you enjoyed my video and you got some information. Please like, share, and subscribe to my videos. And please support me by sharing this information with at least two other people. I hope you have a good day. Thank you for watching.